Hi, my name is Professor Michael Vesley, and I want to thank you for your interest in the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law Masters of Science in Law program. This innovative program launched 3 years ago and has since then educated numerous individuals entering the fields of cybersecurity and crisis management / Homeland Security. Today's talk is going to be focused primarily on these latter track, which is the crisis management and Homeland Security. Now, a lot of people ask us who are interested in this program, why do you call it crisis management / Homeland Security? And the reason for that is kind of touches on a larger issue about the nature of this program, those who participate in it, and those who will act as instructors. Everyone who teaches in this program, who you will interface with and encounter with, are real-world practitioners. There's no one in this program who is just an academic. We all have clients and we all serve people in the real world. And in that kind of sphere, crisis management is a term that matters in the international community. It's a term that's frequently used by the State Department, whereas Homeland Security tends to have a much more US-based connotation to it. So to demonstrate to any of our students who might have an international interest or commitment that our focus is both United States-based and also globally based, we've expanded the name of the program to be Crisis Management and Homeland Security. So I think the most useful way to spend our time today is to speak broadly in two different aspects of the program. One, to talk about the specific curriculum, courses, professors you'll encounter once you enroll in the program. And second, to talk about what are the kind of opportunities for career development, career growth, what are some of the hot button issues that we'll talk about in this program, and then what are some of the services that we provide here at the law school to help you get the most out of the program and to develop as a professional in the workforce, make yourself as marketable as possible. So the way the program is structured is you will have 4 semesters. Most students complete these consecutively. We have 2 starts, fall and spring, so fall, spring, summer, fall, or spring, summer, fall, spring. We do not offer a summer start. That gives us professors a little bit of downtime to relax and recalibrate our courses to make sure they're as up to date as possible. In your first semester, you will not be taking any of these specialty courses in either cybersecurity or crisis management. And the reason for that is to get you to start thinking the way legal experts think. We can't just throw you into the deep end and say, well, start thinking about counterterrorism issues until you understand the way the legal system works, the way lawyers think, the way bills are passed and laws are made, the way judges interpret cases and create case law. And so to that end, in your first semester, you'll be taking a large survey course that kind of introduces you to the American legal system top to bottom. A benefit of this course is, from a practical perspective, whenever any of your friends or family learn about your enrollment in a master's program, they'll inevitably have questions about, my neighbor's tree is growing in my yard, or I got pulled over by the police for speeding. This course answers a lot of those types of practical legal questions and gives you a kind of a taste of various aspects of law. Also in this semester, you'll be taking 2 other classes. One is called Legal Methods, where you think more about the formalism of lawyers in the legal system. And this class will really hone your ability to parse through a legal brief and understand how to pull out the holding of a case versus dicta and how to interpret cases and statutes. Complementing that is the final course of the first semester, which is legal research. One of the most important things about being a practitioner of law, being someone who works with legal issues, is understanding that most of that work is not knowing the law off the top of your head. It's being able to find the answer. You cannot do that until you understand how to do legal research properly. This class will prepare you to engage with primary texts, secondary sources, both electronically and in traditional print form, and really get you to think, how does How does a judge build up one of their opinions? How do they use sources and compile them and create new law? How do legislators look at different materials when they draft new bills and pass new statutes? So all of those courses will go to building up your skill set as a master of legal theory and legal practice. In your second semester is when you'll first encounter some of your specialty courses. Now, I'm speaking about crisis management today. Those of you who are on the cyber track would encounter the introduction to cybersecurity. On my side of the house, so to speak, your first class in the specialty area will be the law and policy of emergency management. Emergency management is a broad term. We're going to look at the way different types of incidents are handled. How does the legal system interface with these challenges? We'll certainly consider FEMA, the Stafford Act, and how that plays into various presidential declarations. But we'll also consider wide-ranging incidents as well, including how does a local jurisdiction handle something like civil unrest, or a tornado, or a flood? How do we interface with things like a pandemic outbreak? What are the legal provisions? We're also going to consider some of the very practical aspects of crisis management in this course. Things like continuity of operations planning. For those of you who do any kind of enterprise or risk management or are looking to move up within your own organization, understanding resilience and continuity are always critical to management level positions. We'll make sure that you have a solid foundation in these concepts by the time you finish this course. The other big course that you will take in your second semester has to do with administrative law and regulatory law. Most people outside of the legal field don't realize that the majority of law in the United States is not created by the governor and the state legislature or Congress and the president or even the Supreme Court. It's created by administrative agencies, because what happens is Congress passes a statute, something like the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act, that says, you have to have clean air to breathe, you have to have clean water to drink. But it doesn't specify the very technical aspects of the law. What are the parts per billion for various particulates, and how much lead can there be, et cetera, et cetera. This is left to specialists in the various agencies, whether this is done through formal rulemaking, adjudication of specific cases, or informal rulemaking, advisory opinions. Administrative agencies really make the country go. If you want to think about a very hot button issue in this field, where an administrative agency has played a critical role and continues to be involved, one only has to Google net neutrality and think about what role has the federal agencies played in enhancing or undermining that concept. In your third semester will be focused almost entirely on your specialty courses. For the crisis management side of the house, you're going to take a class in public health emergencies, where you're going to consider such things as Ebola and quarantine and isolation. What's the difference? You'll consider the anti-vaccination movement. What are the underpinnings of that? What is the state or the federal government allowed to do to combat that scenario? You'll also encounter situations about what happens during an emergency health declaration. Can doctors be compelled to work in specialties that they don't normally interface with? What about supplies? Can they be seized by the government? How long can these last? Can the legislature veto a presidential or gubernatorial declaration of emergency when there's a public health threat? All of these critical issues will come to the fore in your public health emergencies course. The other class you'll be taking this semester is the law of counterterrorism. It's probably the most interesting class you'll take in the program. It is also the most difficult. We're going to consider such critical issues as, what is Guantanamo Bay? What is its legal basis? What are the rights of people who have been detained there? We'll also consider things like drones and asymmetrical warfare. What has happened to our understanding of the laws of war as it's evolved from 1776 up until the present day, when we have non-state actors? What does it mean to have a global war on terror for U.S. citizens at home? We'll also consider intelligence operations like the NSA. We'll think about the big issues that we'll talk about Edward Snowden. We'll talk about PRISM and Upstream and some of the sections of the FISA amendments, the Patriot Act and the Homeland Security Act and the Protect America Act. All of these various and complicated issues will get significant discussion in our counterterrorism class. We'll also talk about the situation at the border. We'll get into the border wall somewhat and talk about how far does executive authority extend? What is Congress's role in all of this? How does the military play? How does the National Guard interface? And some of these nightly issues we see on the news, you'll understand the legal underpinnings and the legal dogma that governs these scenarios. Your final semester, it's a fairly interesting one because you'll only have one formal class, and that class for crisis management will be the Introduction to Cybersecurity survey class. Just so you know, the students in the cybersecurity track will take emergency management as their final course. This class is going to introduce you into the world of cyber, the Internet of Things, what is local governance, what is global governance, how do we deal with such issues as cybercrime. If you think about one of the things you're going to learn very quickly about law is that lawyers, judges, legal practitioners of all sorts always argue through analogy. They always try to find a like or dislike situation to compare their case with. And when we get into the cyber sphere, that gets very tricky because some of the some of the encounters between the United States and Iran, or United States and China, or United States and Russia, or Japan and China, some of the things that happen in the cyberspace, if you analogize them to their real world space, would be acts of war. But we don't go to war over cyber incursions very frequently. We're going to talk about why that is, what are the differences. We'll talk about privacy law and what are the notifications that are required when there's been a breach. And we feel that the reason you need cybersecurity is because as you begin your specialty tracks, emergency management is going to give you the entire spectrum of risk that local, state, federal, international, private sector, non-governmental organizations face. That'll set the table for the three very specific types of risks we present in the program. One being public health emergencies, two being counterterrorism, and three being cybersecurity, not in any particular order. What are you going to be doing the rest of that final semester? You are going to be working on a capstone project. This gives you an opportunity to draw together all of the kind of learning you've done throughout your time in the program. We tend to be fairly flexible in terms of how you approach this final challenge, whether or not you want to do something that is more practical based or more theoretical based. Obviously, for certain problems, if you want to write about the future of Guantanamo detainees, it's going to have to be a fairly theoretical approach because DoD is not letting us walk onto the base and interview people and try to come up with practical solutions. That being said, I've had other students in my program who wanted to write about something like active shooters and legal consequences for institutions of higher education. That individual worked in human resources and was able to come up with practical ideas and solutions that dealt with this very critical issue. So throughout your last semester, you're going to be working on that. You can kind of think of it as a thesis light, because it will take place entirely within one semester. You will have a faculty advisor going with you every step of the way, and getting you to a product that you can be, obviously that completes the program successfully, but also gives you something that you can show to your current employers or future employers to show your mastery of these skills and as a good demonstration of work product you can generate. Before I pivot to some of the more kind of practical components of the program or some of the practical benefits you can expect to receive from the program, I want to tell you what a typical week looks like in the program. So every single week you'll have some sort of lecture to watch. That lecture is pre-recorded. It is frequently updated by all of us to ensure that the materials are as up-to-date as humanly possible. After you go through that lecture, you'll complete a series of discussion questions. This is your main opportunity to interface with your fellow classmates. And one of the nice surprises for the faculty of this program is how we were a little wary when this program was initiated about the kind of camaraderie or bonding that students in the programs would have. We didn't know how tight-knit students would be able to come when they're interfacing with each other in kind of a virtual space. But it's turned out that for many of the cadres that have graduated from this MSL program, students have actually formed tighter bonds than some of our residential students, which is kind of a nice surprise for all of us working in the program. So in this discussion space, you'll be able to respond to some kind of provoking questions to get you thinking, and then you will be able to interface with responses from some of your other classmates. After that, you will do an assignment for the week. All of this, you'll get feedback from the professors who teach to get you, one, did you get the information accurately, but also to get you to think about different issues that might come up or might be relevant to the ideas that you have posed or argued. It's a lot of work, and it's a very challenging program, and we want this degree to mean something when you leave. We are very proud of our online program, so we don't make it unnecessarily difficult, but we want you, I'm a practitioner, and I have encountered some of my former students in that world once they've completed this program, and seeing them able to hold their own against lawyers and other legal practitioners has just been the kind of proof of concept I've needed that the way we built this course is to challenge you and push you is the correct approach. Okay, now that we've kind of talked about the kind of academic overview that you'll encounter in this program, I want to talk to you about some of the more kind of practical, what happens after I'm done this program? People tend to enter this program for one of two reasons. One, they want a new career. They want to change what they're doing. They might want to keep some of their former career or some of their kind of specialized or technical knowledge and merge it, but they want to change lanes completely. Or two, people who want advancement in their current career. They want to take on more responsibility or want to move into a management or C-suite position, and they need that kind of they need that kind of additional technical knowledge. And as we've seen in recent years, MBA programs numbers are dropping year by year. It's a degree that does not carry the same cachet as it used to be because it's not specialized enough. And this Master's of Science in Law gives you a specialty credential that shows you have mastery over an area of law. So what are some of the kind of hot topic areas that these courses touch on right now? Well, I mean, obviously, since September 11th, counterterrorism has been one of the biggest issues facing the United States. Our recent policies at the southern border have brought some additional issues to the front. And wherever you stand on these issues, and there's a whole spectrum of different arguments, ideas, positions, the one thing that is indisputable is that we need new energy, new professionals who have mastery of this highly technical area of law to come in and find solutions that we haven't been able to find to date. So one of the hot button areas we'll talk about is some of the Homeland security issues as they relate to border security. Another major hot button issue that this course of study will prepare you to deal with is something like the anti-vaccine movement. We've seen, sadly, attacks on science and science-based policy. And frequently, it's hard to understand where this originates from and how do we counter it. And what is the authority that government wields? We've seen numerous states enact new policies that do not allow for certain exemptions to continue to exist for anti-vaccine policy. But this program will introduce you to many of these programs. They'll introduce you to what are the legal underpinnings, what is the state permitted to do, what are the kind of outside bounds of state authority, what is the different authorities between the federal government and the state government. The one last kind of big hot button issue I would say that this program takes head on is climate change. I've worked in counterterrorism for a long time. I've worked in emergency management for a long time. I can say that I find both of them interesting. I find both of them challenging and rewarding, but my heart lies in emergency management. With local governments and state government and the federal government, working with international governments on how do we deal with emergencies, how do we buy down risk to protect populations from the entire spectrum of risk, ranging from wildfire to coastal flooding to pandemic outbreaks. That's the kind of problems I am most interested in. Climate change exacerbates nearly all of these. As we see sea level rise, the spread of new tropical diseases, vector-borne illness from mosquitoes are getting into regions they never got to before. Extreme weather events, as the climate warms, we see stronger storms and storms in parts of the country we never saw before. For example, as the Gulf of Mexico can now supercharge the atmosphere and create, larger and larger hurricanes. We see more extremes in climate, where we get extremely wet followed by extremely dry seasons. One has to look no further than Southern California to see the challenges there of drought and wildfire. All of these issues, all of these kind of, climate change is going to continue to present a host of problems and might be the biggest challenge that humanity has ever faced. It is certainly going to take science to help us solve that problem. It's also going to take people who understand law. And going through this program, you will have that expertise to play a key role in addressing some of these emerging issues. So what do our students do when they graduate? I'm only going to speak to those students who do the Crisis Management and Homeland Security track. I know there's another webinar where we talk about cybersecurity issues, and Professor Rauschecker walks you through that career path. But as it relates to Homeland Security, Crisis Management, to be honest, the vast majority of people who want to change careers end up going to state and local government and end up going into emergency management or public health departments and work on issues that are, they feel are pressing issues in their own hometown or their own county or their own state or their own city. We do get people who completely change careers and move on to something like a good chunk of our employees move on to consulting. We have several who have moved on to Deloitte and Booz Allen and work on these larger crisis management issues from those kinds of consulting agencies. We have also had a fair share of our employees, of our graduates move on to employment at federally based agencies like FEMA or HHS. Most of those end up going into FEMA. Those employees who want to move up in their current job, the most useful aspects of this program for those of you who want to move up tend to fall into one of three big areas. One, for people who currently work in hospitals and want more responsibility or more duties, some of the challenges associated with the public health concerns, public health issues, emergencies, that enables people to move up to the administration level of hospitals. It enables them to interface better with clinicians, doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, all of your technicians in the hospital, and develop policy at that level better. The other big area that helps, one of the other big areas that helps people move up is security in general. Thinking more about facility security, more about securing human capital, and ensuring that your base of employees are resilient and there's levels of redundancy so that if a jurisdiction or a business is impacted by some incident, you can keep the enterprise going. And that relates to the final group of people, the final area that helps people move up in their current organization, that being management of enterprise liability. This program, if nothing else, will give you it'll be more than a foundation. It will give you expertise in understanding how do we identify threats, hazards, how do we compile those into something we can understand, i.e. a risk assessment. How can we buy down that risk? And how does the law help us in that process? What do we need to be aware of for compliance reasons? What do we need to be aware of for funding reasons? What can we do to leverage statutes, case decisions, and regulations to make sure that we are as secure as possible and we're buying down the risk faced in our organization as much as possible. Anyone who's in a C-suite, anyone who's in business management, anyone who's a proprietor or a partner in a law firm, in an accounting firm, in whatever, they must have a sense of what is risk management, how do we address it, and what are the relevant laws that interface with this concept. When you leave this program, you will have an extremely powerful grasp of these concepts, which will enable you to make these decisions efficiently and effectively. For my last couple of minutes, the last thing I want to talk to you all about is some of the services provided while you're enrolled in the program. I understand that for some people moving into an online space for education, there's trepidation of, well, how am I going to get to know my professors? How am I going to get to grow as a professional? Well, you should know that your professors are able to interface with you live. I don't want to say anytime, but really whenever you need it. We can video chat. If you're in the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area, we go out of our way to meet with you live. We can talk on the phone. Usually within 3 to 4 days, if you want to talk with your professor, like in a live setting, we will make that happen. As I've indicated earlier, all of your professors are, practitioners. We all working in the field now. So throughout the entire semester, we will push employment opportunities or programs that might enhance your professional development and get you enrolled in those and put you in contact with people that we know. We use our contacts to help advance your careers. So if there's opportunities at FEMA or at a city health department or at DOD that we think would be useful to the class, we will put you in contact with them. We will facilitate that. In addition to that, our Dean Jose Bajamande Gonzalez, he's in charge of professional development with the program. He can help you with resume development. He can teach you about, we have a wide range of individuals entering our program, some of whom have had full-blown careers, some of whom are coming out of undergraduate for the first time, although I will say the former is far more common. But Dean Jose Bajamande Gonzalez can help coach you about what does it mean to be a professional in a workplace? How do you make yourself stand out? How do you make yourself more marketable? He can also talk to you about thinking about your career long term. How do you build skills early on? How do you diversify your experience to make yourself as employable as possible? And not just in a sense of what are the monetary returns, but finding a career, a vocation, a path that you will find meaningful, that you will find fulfilling, and that when you're all done at the end of your career in, slightly joking tongue-in-cheek, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you can look back at your body of work and be proud of what you accomplished and know you left the world better than you found it. To do that, our world has become more and more technical, more and more focused, and a program like this Master of Science in Law gives you the opportunity to acquire that skills and technical knowledge. I want to thank you for spending some time with me whenever you watch this. If you have additional questions, you can go to our website at the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. You can click on the MSL link, or you can email directly msl@law.umaryland.edu. That's msl@law.maryland.edu. That will get the process rolling, put you in touch with our admissions deans, and if you want to speak to me or Professor Rouschecker about either program, about anything about the program, or anything about the law school, or opportunities after you graduate, or former students, using that email address can help facilitate that process and put you in touch with us. Again, thank you for your time.